It starts with an idea to create something that has never existed and boldly go where no human has gone. But bold ideas are more than just words. They are a nation not starving during a global pandemic. They are a family spending more happy moments together. They are the desire to create a better tomorrow. And data is the breath that brings these bold ideas to life. Boldly go on your data journey. Caserta will help you get there.
Late. Hi guys, how you doing? Welcome to our next session. I'm sorry we're trying to deal with the lack of lunches. Did everybody get lunch today? Okay. Yeah. It seems that the students came in bulk. They found out how good our caterers were, and they just attacked. And we thought we had people at all stations. We couldn't keep up.
They need it more than we do.
That's not why we're here. We're here because we're lucky to have a true industry thought leader, Joe Caserta, to talk to us about his experience and share his experience. And his reputation far precedes him. I could sit here and read his bio, but it would take me half the morning, so I'm not going to, or afternoon. I'm not going to do that. I will tell you he's going to talk about moving from legacy systems into modern data systems. He's one of the most experienced people we have in the industry, and we're really fortunate to have Joe here. So, Joe, welcome and thanks, and we're looking forward to hearing your talk.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me? Yeah? All right, awesome. Good. All right, where are we? Let's get started. So in case you haven't heard of me, so I'm Joe Caserta. I'm the founding CEO of a company called Caserta. All we do is data solutions, and we recently were acquired by McKinsey and Company June 1st, so it's brand new news. So I think today's day 50. So it's been great, and the next slide I'll talk about it. Thank you. I just have done what I'm about to talk about 150 times, give or take, probably a little bit more. I also co-wrote the Data Warehouse ETL Toolkit. For those of you who may or may not have that, I've read that with a guy named Ralph Kimball. And what else do you want to know about me? The weird thing about me is I'm a lefty, and this room is made for righties. So I'm going to try not to bury myself in the corner so I could use my left hand. But we'll get through it. Oh, yeah, we'll see. One other little tidbit about me is I very recently just had open heart surgery. So I'm fine, I'm recovered, but I may sit down because sometimes the wind gets, I'm still not fully recovered, but I'm fine. But if I'm sitting down, it's not because you're boring me. It's because I just need to catch my breath. And that's it. So I coach CDOs across all sectors, and I've been speaking at this event for about 8 years. And it's pretty exciting because I remember the first time I did it like it was yesterday. It was in a different building at MIT, and there was about 35 people in the entire exhibit, which was, and now I think we're about nearly 3,000 between people in here and online. So where is everybody? I don't know. So just a quick, this is big news for me and for the industry. McKinsey and Company, one of the most prestigious consulting firms in the world, they realized that they had a gap in data engineering, data strategy, data implementation. You can't really have a strategic business executive conversation without talking about data anymore, right? So they looked for, what I humbly submit as the best consulting firm in the world when it comes to data. And for some reason, they picked Caserta. So, but it's been a wild ride. It's been, like I said, about a month and a half in. It's new news, and hopefully it'll be good for everybody in the world. Okay, so if you sit in on any of the sessions today, I just want to address the elephant in the room, how everybody's just talking about you need to treat data as a product, right? The hell does that mean, right? I do think that all of our clients, I'd say 100% of our clients, and I always speak in third person because I'm a consultant. I've been doing it for like 30 years, so I'm used to speaking on other people's behalf. So, most of the people that we're talking to are in the middle or the beginning of a major transformation, to go from being like a conventional wisdom-run company to being completely analytics-driven, data-driven. And how do you do that, right? That's really why the CDO role was born, because it's not trivial, right? There's a lot to think about. There's a lot to know. And thinking about it as a product, so what does that mean? That means that, and why do we have to, why did we change? When we were building data warehouses in the 90s, you built reports, they kind of worked, right? Why is everything turned on its head now? And the reason it's turned on its head is because, we used to just conduct business, record transactions of the business, and then analyze those transactions to try to run the business better. And the consumer of the data solutions were almost primarily human beings, right? Nowadays, in my world anyway, the consumer of our data platforms are machines, right? They're just applications or other platforms or external APIs where there's no human beings involved anymore. So we have to think of if you were to try to automate something, right? You think of Henry Ford, right? Where, we used to have a centralized data warehouse department, and they're all requests for reports would go to those guys, and they'd get all the data and follow all the best techniques and then try to print some reports. But nowadays, you need to be able to be agile enough to where every time you open your phone and open up any app, right, it's going to be different. It's going to look different from the last time you opened it, right? And then if you and I were to open it at the same time, well, you and I, it might be a little similar because we're middle-aged white guys, right? But if you take somebody with a different persona, different characteristics, their experience is going to be completely different, right? And in order to be that dynamic, right, there's no more data warehousing, right? There's no more time to collect data and look at the data quality and figure out how to integrate it. We have to figure out how to build an assembly line, how to think like Henry Ford did, where you're just pumping out cars, right? We're just pumping out, instead of the product of a car, we're pumping out data products. And the other thing that we have to get really good at is around Christmas time, you'll notice that there is bundles of products that you can easily consume, right? If you're going shopping, for your wife or something, you can get a little box with perfume and hand cream and moisturizer. It's all collected and pretty in a bow for you, right? And that's basically, as data people, that's our job, is to take all of the data assets, figure out, how did they decide which 4 products to put in that box, right? So we have to figure out which of the 4 data products that the consumers are going to need, put in a pretty little bow, and be able to pump it out, right? Customized reports really are just kind of a thing of the past. So our systems need to get super smart, right? They need to be able to, I think one of the visions is that, I assume, I didn't sit in a lot of sessions, but I assume a lot of the sessions are talking about AI and using AI for customer experience and all that. But I think the real opportunity for AI is turning it inside out and using it to make our data better, right? To be able to do things like, data detection, data quality, anomaly detection, figuring out how to join data together, all of these things that we're doing somewhat manually, has to change, right? And that's the only way we're going to start to productionalize data. So what we want to be able to do is we want to figure out any data product managers in the room. So what a data product managers, just another survey. Any CDOs in the room? Okay. All right, cool. What data product managers do, CDOs, do you work with data product managers? Yeah? Peers, or is there a hierarchy? Oh, peers, right. So, so this is, the way it typically works. The data product manager, they're on a hook to figure out like what the product needs to look like, right? What color should it be, right? Is it like make sure it's edible for 3-year-olds, right? So they figure out like the market, making sure that there's innovation around it, making sure that there's, it's consumable. And then you're their partner, right? Hopefully. And you're on the hook to make sure that there's an assembly line built to create that product, right? And that includes innovation on the back end, technology, data governance, right? Any data product, any product that you would think of, even if it's like, this little clicker, right? This little clicker, all of the plastics and all of the rubbers and all the moving mechanical parts, right? There's quality assurance at every point, right? When we're receiving the plastics, when we're receiving the rubber, when we're receiving the mechanical parts, right? Goes through a data quality check. And then after it's assembled, it goes through another data quality check. Before it gets in my hand, I bet you this clicker went through like 6 data quality checks, if not more, right? So, that type of rigor, if we're actually calling data a product, it needs the same type of rigor when we're doing data, right? And I think, what I've seen in my experience is that's the least probably effective thing that I've seen. Lots of people talking about AI and ML and DevOps and MLOps, but just like getting the data right? That seems to be, it's the least sexy part of the job, and it's the most important part of the job. And there's new innovative ways to do it better, and we're going to talk about a little of those ways. So why do we care? One of the key things that we do with our data is still, to this day, is we have to prove our numbers, right? We have to report our numbers to whoever cares, whether it's Wall Street or SEC or HIPAA or whatever, right? We need to be able to say this is what our revenue was, this is what our profit was, and be able to prove it, right? And we're kind of on the hook to do that, right? At the most simplistic level, any CDO should be able to stand by regulatory reporting and just make sure that it's sound. The other thing that we want to be able to do is we want to be able to help the company with innovation about using data to grow, right, and to scale. And that, that's probably what most of the other sessions are talking about is like, forward thinking like, how do I use data in new ways that we've never done before and figure out how to make a new data product that never existed before and monetize it, right? And that's kind of the cool part probably. Who in this room, that's why you took this job, right? That is, a couple of you. That is half a hand. Yeah, that is, that is usually the part that gets people excited, right? And usually the part that I think at some point, CDOs will rise. How many people in the room report to your CEO? About 3, 4. I think number 2 here is will drive more CDOs. That's the part that'll drive more CDOs to start reporting to the CEO, right? When you start generating revenue in new ways, right? And you actually become a profit center rather than a cost center. And that's the exciting part. In order to get there, Number 3 is landscape simplification. That is the biggest challenge of a lot of companies out there, is that they're stuck with legacy tech debt. And when you're stuck with legacy tech debt, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's just a big old antiquated system that, don't look at it because it might break, right? And, so you just leave it alone, and then you start bolting things around it in order to become optimized and be able to compete in today's world. And I think it's really hard to bite the bullet and say, this got me here, but this isn't going to get me to where I need to be, right? And so landscape simplification is it's a big pill to swallow, but it's something that has to be swallowed, where you have to just think about, modernizing your existing systems, and sometimes start from scratch, right? And we have some clients that will even build a new somewhat company or a division that will cannibalize the business from the legacy systems, right? Because it's easier to just build from new than to try to make something that's not what it was meant to be. And so a lot of people say, well, why would I cannibalize my business? Why would I invest so much money in something that I'm only going to end up with something that I already have? And the answer is because if you don't cannibalize it, your competitors are going to cannibalize it, right? So you're not going to end up with the same thing if you don't do it. You're going to end up with nothing if you don't do it, right? So it's pretty compelling. And then digital resiliency is just making sure that you understand that the only way to compete nowadays is through a digital presence. And that digital presence, just like an in-person presence, you need to have a secure environment for your customers and your employees and everybody that you deal with to work, right? So that's really important. And I think if you could achieve these 4 things and nothing else, as a CDO, you will be successful. One question that I always get is, how important is senior leadership in this? Can I just be like, CDOs? Of the CDOs in the room, who came through tech? There's more people who came through tech than said they were CDOs. That's weird. It's a data quality issue here.
Reporting issue.
How many people came from the business? Oh, almost half and half. Okay, cool. When there's senior leadership involved, here's some stats. The one really nice thing about McKinsey is that there's lots of stats. They have their whole, research division. So when you have senior leadership, statistically, and this is if you look at the footnote here, that breaking away what is it? Secrets to Scaling Analytics. It's a really good article. I have nothing to sell here, right? It's for free, and it's a really nice article. And it interviewed 1,000 different companies, and based on the 1,000 people, it says that you're 89% more likely to attract better talent when you have senior leadership. And it's a really important thing, even within Caserta, the fact that from the very top level of the company is a data engineer, that gives us a lot of cred, right, when we're hiring people. And it's the same thing within the organization. When your senior leader, when your CEO, can walk into a room with his arm around you saying that the data guy is the most important thing to my agenda, that's important, right? That changes everything about your company. And that's really important. Without that, you're looking at 34%, right, rather than 89%. And then the people who you get tend to be better, right? So just much, much, much deeper. There's lots of people out there who say they do analytics and they probably have R on their laptop, but they don't really understand enterprise analytics, right? Which is a different beast, right? And you want to be able to have, when you have very senior leadership, the thought of, let me ask a question. of everybody in the room, how many people think that data adoption, just getting people to understand the value of the data in the organization, is probably one of the biggest challenges you have? Virtually every room, every single hand almost. Yeah. That's it. You could talk tech all you want. It's just like, it's a people problem, right? And when you have senior leadership, at the helm saying this is the direction of the business, it changes everything, and it just makes things much easier. So here's some more stats for you. So again, you could talk about AI and ML and all the shiny stuff. Still to this day, half the data in most organizations are completely dark. Nobody uses it. 89% of the data says that the data is still siloed. Like, we still don't have a way. It's 2023, almost 2022, right? We still don't have a way of having any person in the business to be able to look across different parts of the company and do analytics across the company. It's a challenge. 83% can't do that, right? It's still the basics are missing, right? 95% say that there's long-term damage due to inefficient data management, right? So who feels like your data management is sound? 0 people. Whose job is it to make data management sound? Right? So what's holding us up? What's holding us up? It's not easy, right? It's like herding cats, right? There's lots of moving parts and lots of people, right? And people all have their own agendas, and you need that top leadership to say, this is a priority. Without this, we are going to fail, right? Because it's the truth. 58% that the data is just too complex, right? It's like, the data's there, but give me a report of sales by customer and it takes 3 months. Why is that, right? It's too complicated, right? We just need to make it iPhone easy. You should be able to, nowadays we should just be able to ask Siri, what are my sales by customer, right? And she should just tell me. The fact that we need to go make an IT request for a report or even self-service, try to figure out, what do we call the customers again? It's crazy. There's so much opportunity for people in your position. It's an exciting time to be a CDO right now. And then the last one is just the average cost of data breaches in the millions, 7.9. And this is right. Averages tend to be skewed because there are some that might be $100 and some that might be 100 million, right? But on average, it's 7.9. So getting the data right, getting the data secure, getting the data integrated, and making the data available. Still basics, right? This is still the top of the food chain for priority, right? And if you can get this right, then the other stuff starts to get really, really easy, right? If you don't get this stuff right, start talking about AI, all you're going to do is make really stupid robots because they're based on stupid data, right? So how do we fix it? So, when Wall Street started, right, before Wall Street, it was a free-for-all, right, for companies. They're all self-governed. But when Wall Street started, we started to have legal obligation to have corporate governance, right? And most companies have legal counsel and chief compliance officers, and right, there's a whole organization based on it. And even to some extent, IT governance, right? There's some rigor around IT governance. Data governance today is kind of like the redheaded stepchild, right? It's like nobody wants to talk about it. Everybody has right? Raise your hand if you have a data governance program going on right now, right? Almost 100% of the room. How many have an effective data governance program going on right now?
You have metrics?
Yeah, 0. right? There's no real standards, right? There's no standards on how this ought to be done. If you're not governing your corporate governance correctly, you know quick, right? If you're not governing your data governance correctly, you don't know until somebody complains about a bad number on a report, right? It's very, very different. There's so tremendous opportunity to make this better. The data governance needs to have a seat at the table, just like all the others. Data is just too important nowadays to ignore it. So data governance, probably one of the most ambiguous terms besides AI nowadays. But when I say data governance, it's very, very specific details around the organization of people. Do you have an enterprise data council? Do you have data stewards for every domain in the organization, right? Do you have workflows for when there are data anomalies and when there are new data requests, right? Does it actually happen? Do you have what I call the data governance traffic cop? So who knows how to map the requests to the right people in the organization? Metadata, do you have data lineage? Do you have a data glossary? Do you have a data catalog? I feel like this is so basic, but of these things, how many people have this nailed? One? Awesome. You get the gold star. Yeah.
Yeah, good most of
Yeah. Data quality and data and monitoring too is the reason I put them together, because data quality tends to be when you're bringing new data on board. You do rigorous data quality investigation, right? And you come up with some rules to make it so that you can integrate it with the rest of your data. Hopefully, at least you're doing that. But then the constant monitoring to keep looking for new anomalies and being able to detect them and being able to, so this is where I think if you want to get innovative, ML and AI definitely belongs here, right? Data is just basically patterns. Machines are really good at detecting patterns. And when you have anomalies in your patterns, a machine can detect that. Why we don't do that? I don't know. Why don't we do that? We're waiting for data stewards to detect it, or we're waiting for business users to detect it. So we do want to get data quality, all of this, data quality, business process integration, master data management. I hear, what was his name from Tamar? Stone, yeah, I heard he gave a great talk. Management. I agree with him. I didn't sit in a session, but the common theme that he said was that the thought of fixing data, synchronously is just like we've been trying for 3 decades, at least 2. It's just never going to happen. So just take it for what it is and then fix it after the fact. I do think that there's some merit to that idea, right? We in this room are the ones that experiences data coming from all of the different systems. We have an opportunity to be able to fix it, right? And we can do it systematically, right? With ML and AI. Okay. So a good way to do this is to go through some rigor around what is your maturity. When I see 100% of you are responsible for data quality, and 2% of you, or I guess it would be maybe 5% of you, actually feel like you're doing it well, right? It's something to notice. It's something to think about as an opportunity. And so a good way to do this is to just get somebody to come in and take a look. And a good way to approach it is to dissect it into these 8 different dimensions. Culture and leadership is actually a really, really big one. One of the other challenges I'm sure everybody is facing is, the build it and they will come concept. We could build the greatest mousetrap in the world. You're expecting people who have been doing the same job the same way for their career, and now you're telling them to do something completely different, and they're just going to say, oh, okay, I'll do that. I'll do that thing that I know nothing about, that I never saw before, and stake the rest of my career on that. Why not? They're just not going to do it, right? So getting people to come around and actually embrace what we're doing, that is as monumental as any other part of this, right? It's, I consider whenever we do a project, it's usually the most disruptive thing the company has ever gone through. And everybody that we're talking to, we're basically taking everything they've been doing and changing it. And when you change, when any human being goes through change, you're basically, two things are happening. You're losing something you're used to, and then you're gaining something that's unknown, right? So what a lot of the people in this room, a lot of the speakers, they talk about, well, just educate them on the new shiny stuff, and then they'll be happy. But that's not enough, right? You can't ignore the fact that they're losing something that they have, right? And when you lose something you have, you're basically going through a grieving process. And you have to acknowledge that, right? If we're the change agents in the organization, we have to realize that the people in our organization are going to be grieving before they start celebrating. So we have to understand the different steps of grieving. It's like, first it's denial, then it's anger, right? And there's 5 different levels of grieving until they finally come around and accept that, yes, this is actually going to be okay. And then you could focus on the shiny stuff, right? Until you do that, it's going to be a struggle, right? And that's why no hands went up, because it's a struggle. Right? So this slide just talks about different ways of approaching it, right? There's, for the guys or women who came from the tech world, right? We call that the grassroots, right? Where, the build it, they will come. We know how to do data engineering than the last guy, so we're just going to re-engineer everything, right? Is that going to work? Has that been successful? Little? And then the other one is that, we want to be able to just be like all things to all people, right? And not realize that we're forgetting about building this product, right? If we focus on building this product and we build the end-to-end solution to build this product, we can make this product production really successful. And then we build another product, then we build another product. When we try to say, we're going to build a platform that's going to build all the products we could ever think of, that's when things start falling apart, right? So at the bottom, we start talking about data products, right? Where we figure out, is there a market, and can we put some value on it that's going to generate enough excitement to invest in thinking about what we do differently, and then start re-engineering what we're doing differently, right? So when we build products, whether data products or not, you always think about the different type of archetypes, and as far as I know, there's 5. There may be others that I haven't thought of, but these are the 5 that I think about. At dead center, we have the reporting systems, which we all know and love. But I was talking to somebody outside just before this talk, and I told him that he and I go way back. We used to work together like 10, 15, 20 years ago. And I was saying, when we used to work together, we used to build a lot of reports. But today, all of our consumers are machines, right? We're not building for people anymore. So, when you realize that the consumer of your data is applications, you start to think about things a little differently, right? Throughput, real time, standardization, right? APIs, right? These are the things that need to be part of every data solution. Advanced analytics, if you think of, at some point, the whole world is going to be run like Amazon website is run, right? If everybody in the room went to the Amazon website, we'd all get a completely different experience. It's because it's 100% driven by analytics, right? It knows all the products we bought, all our persona, our peers' persona, where we are, right? If we return things, we even know if I look at something and you look at the exact same something, it could be different prices, right? Because it knows that I don't shop around. I'm like, I don't have time. Click, I'll buy it, right? And so now, like the consumer of a lot of the data products are dynamic pricing engines, right? It's a very different type of consumer. So we need to just think about it. Discovery sandboxes. I don't know if anybody else is talking about what I typically call ephemeral data science workspaces. Yeah. So these are just safe places for people to experiment. And then when they experiment, right, they're taking data assets, they're putting it in a safe place, or we're putting it in a safe place for them, or creating the environment for them. And they're able to create new assets that may or may not be useful, right? And if they're not useful, there needs to be a very rigorous SLA that just shuts it down. Or if it is useful, we need to go back to IT governance, which was in this earlier slide. We need to figure out, okay, what was the data model? What was the algorithmic model? What was the data set? All right, what are all the moving parts? What were the pipelines? And take that and put it through a process, IT governance and data governance, so we could promote it to now become an enterprise data asset, right? This is something that we, at least I wasn't talking about this 5 years ago, right? It's, it's something that it's mandatory. Like, we have to have this now. So you can't talk about data nowadays without talking about the cloud. Who is not on the cloud? Oh, we have a couple. I was going to skip this slide, but we have a couple not on the cloud. If you're not on the cloud, just get on the cloud. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can have 100 slides with all the reasons, but I think it would be really difficult to do any of the things I'm talking about and not be on the cloud. At least, not do it in the time that the business needs to have it done. That's the ultimate message here. So what do we think? We talked about the basics. Now let's get to the fun stuff, the shiny stuff. So this is kind of a prediction, kind of real life, and kind of fun to talk about, right? So I do think that, what we're doing is we're enabling or creating an environment that supports artificial intelligence to deal with that, to create users, and to create users. Maybe someday we'll be creating users, but to create interfaces for users, whether they're chatbots or text or what have you, having dynamic interfaces so people can actually interact with the data in real time, be completely analytics driven. We also want to be able to just have everybody in the organization data literate, right? Again, the people part is as important. We're probably seeing as much requests of companies to say, just help us with data literacy. Like, help us figure out who are the personas in the organization. We have our executives, we have our workers, we have our managers, right? There's usually a half a dozen different personas, all different to different organizations. And each one of them needs to start thinking about data in a different way, right? And so there needs to be some deliberate delivery on like how to get people to feel safe and to get excited, right? And to start understand like, how is this actually going to make my job better and not take my job away from me, right? That's the biggest fear, is like people like, the robots are going to take my job, right? It's not the case, right? The one thing robots will never have, I don't think in our lifetime anyways, empathy, right? The human beings, right? Our empathy is our strongest asset right now. Learning how to add 1 + 1 and 2 + 2 and, 9 million times 27, machines are really good at that. Like, if we were good at that, yeah, then too bad. But if we start figuring out that, you can't really run a company without having some emotion and some feelings and some empathy for the customer. And that is what the humans start focusing on. And we're augmented by some AI in order to make our jobs easier. To me, that's the future. That's basically this. There's a whole lot to say here. You can read it in the takeaway. It's a lot of homework. This actually goes through so what do I do now, right? So, what do I want to do now? I want to institute a data academy. So these are just like some best practices for if you're ready, right? If you have the basics down and you're ready to go to the next level, here's some takeaways on what you might be able to do. But at the end of the day, right, you just have to keep thinking of the 3 Ps, right? The 3 Ps are your people, or the people, processes, like how are things actually getting done, and the platform of which everything is happening, right? And if you just think of the 3 Ps and just think, how do I modernize the platform? How do I modernize the people? How do I get them to start thinking differently? And then how do I modernize the processes, right? I'll never forget, we had a healthcare client once where we wanted to be able to look at doctors' notes. In the area, they were noticing that there was a lot of teenage suicides. Pretty important stuff, right? So we wanted to try to save lives. And there was a hunch by the physician that said, I think if you go through the doctor's notes, not by like ICD-9 codes and like all the standard stuff, but if you can just look at what we were writing, there might be some trends of what the patients were talking about before they attempted suicide. So we went through and we built a great platform. We ingested all the data from the EMRs, Cerner and Epic and all that. And we were able to get some natural language processing. We actually had some PhDs going through and writing the algorithmic code to figure out like how to detect this stuff. And then we got stopped because detecting, this blows my mind, detecting attempted suicides was not an allowed use for that data set. So the data governance team in the company stopped us. They halted the project. Right? So what we had to do is we had to take a pause and we had to help them rewrite the data governance policy for the data so that we can actually do this project. And does this like sound familiar to anybody? Like, being able to use data in a new way that you never used it before, right? That's kind of what we're getting paid to do, right? We're getting paid to think about new ways of monetizing data. And we're shooting ourselves in the foot because we have these old school, rigorous data governance policies that are made to protect us, and they do, but they're just too hard. They're too hardened, and they didn't evolve with what we're trying to do today. So a big part of success for a lot of companies is just softening or rewriting a lot of the data governance policies and practices that exist so that we can innovate. Right? So, a couple tips. So, if you don't already have one, I would create an enterprise data governance playbook. I do think that the reference architecture from a technical perspective within the organization might be outdated. You might be good to go, but it's probably worth reviewing and doing a sanity check. You do need to have a roadmap. I don't think anybody is in their end state today, right? So how are you going to get to the end state? What are the baby steps you need to take, and how long do you think it's going to take? And what does that end state actually look like, right? I think that's really important to have that vision. It's really, when you deal with data literacy, it's important to share that this is a journey, and we're all going to be on this journey together. Right, and be able to articulate what that journey is going to look like, right? The biggest, fear of the unknown is the biggest fear. Once you remove the unknown, then it's not so scary anymore, right? So just be able to articulate what you're trying to do. And then develop a strategy, right? And think of it as an enterprise. Even if you're only building one widget, right? You still think of it as an enterprise, and then you build a widget at a time, right? And come up with an enterprise solution. CDO Office is a comprehensive data organization underpinned by a modern, scalable data architecture. You like that? Cool. So how do you do that? Like, what type of people do you need to do that? I made a few different columns because everybody is coming from a different perspective. You know, we probably have some tech people, some infrastructure people, some data people, some business people. But you know, if you look at, I'm going to guess here in the room, the second to last column is probably where some of you are. But it takes a village, right, to do this, right? How many people is a one-man CDO department or a one person? That's actually good. Nobody. That's great because there are some? Okay. But just in this same conference last year, probably half the room raised their hand, right? And the year before that, almost everybody. So we are making progress. We are actually getting the respect that we deserve, finally. This is typically what the organization, you know, as you're building out your data products, you're building out teams, it does take a village. You do need people from the data organization, people from IT organization, from the PMO, and also from the, you know, advanced analytics, chief analytics officer, that's separate from what you're doing. And then everybody comes together as a team and you get it done. And you work in sprints just like you're building a product. So in case you don't know what data literacy means, excuse me, just take a sip. We want to be able to just get people acclimated. It's like, you know, when you jump in a swimming pool, right? That first few seconds, it's like, it's freezing, right? But then after like 2-3 minutes, it's like, oh, this is nice, right? And that's kind of what data literacy is. Data literacy is just getting people to, first of all, be able to, you know, jump in the pool and feel safe that within 2 or 3 minutes it's going to be okay, right? And that's basically, at the end of the day, that's all we're trying to do. We're just trying to get people to come to the table and feel safe. And the way you do that is you need to be able to speak in their language. You need to be able to understand. The easiest thing to do is to understand, like, what are the different personas in the organization, and then come up with somewhat custom, somewhat repeatable programs for them to go through. It could be online. It could be in person. There's no real standard way to do this yet. I find that with the senior leaders, it's always best to get them in a room and just talk to them. And then when you're dealing with massive workforces, you know, like computer-based training type of modules tend to work best. Like, just have them click through it to make sure that they're getting it along the way, make it testable. All right, that seems to be the best combination to get through this. And, you know, the ultimate thing you're trying to do is just affect the culture, right? Make sure that everybody in the organization is going to rally around data and start thinking about it in a new way. Never forget, 80% of interactions with data, people don't know what they're looking for, right? I remember, you know, IT folks would say, if they don't ask me for data at least 3 times, they don't really need it. And that's not the case. That's not really true, right? People, they don't know what they want until they see it, and they experiment with it. And, you know, especially if you're building models, right? You don't know which variables have, you know, statistical significance until you put it in the model, right? So you need that data, and then you could, you know, do what you want with it later. I do think that we need to figure out, we need to stop the guy from saying if they don't ask for it 3 times, they don't need it. We need to just eliminate that. We need to be able to make ETL and I'm the inventor of ETL, kind of, at least the best practices as part of it. I believe that we need the next version, right? The next version is to be smart, right? From a system perspective. I think machine learning and AI, which Stonebreaker was talking about, I think that is the future. I think that anomaly detection, patterns for joins, like all, standardization of models, all of this should be lights out operation that the machines can just figure out. It's 2022, we should be able to do this. I think all orchestration and all tasks should be 100% automated. And I'm not talking about like writing cron jobs. I'm talking about like sophisticated automation for when things break, that the machine should be able to make decisions on like what to do next. Natural language processing, machine learning, advanced analytics, again, turning what we know inside out and being able to use the advanced sophistication of machine learning and turn it on the data to make the data actually better. We're wrapping up. I got one more minute. In a survey that we did, this is an opportunity where knowledge workers are responsible for doing these duties, but it's proven that these activities could be done in an automated way, and all of the different parts, the moving parts, data collection and data processing is pretty high up there, So what I think is we have to take like the existing infrastructure that we're used to, that we've probably all collectively designed and made what it is today, but we have to start rethinking how we do everything. Just going to click through this. And start doing things like building bots to figure out how to join things together, how to clean things, how to reveal data quality issues, and know what the action to take based on the data quality issue, right? I do think that interfaces, I think BI tools are going to be a thing of the past. Sorry, BI tool vendors in the room. But I do think that interactions with data is just going to be through applications, through APIs. And I think that within our career, probably within the next year, definitely less than 3 years, we will be interacting with our corporate data through chatbots. We'll just be asking, what were my sales by region, right? And it will just tell us, right? We have to get there. If we could find out, like, what was the stock price for Apple, why can't we figure out what were our sales yesterday? Like, we need to get there, right? And I think everybody in the room here is responsible for getting there. So you have some homework. So your homework is just take a look at these questions, and hopefully you all have a copy of this deck. If you don't, maybe.
It's on the Wova platform.
Yeah.
Along with the presentation that's now been streamed. For the next 3 months, you can access this presentation, and I'm telling you, a lot of people will be accessing it.
So go find the presentation, take a look at these questions, and take a good hard. They're going to make you take a good hard look at yourself and your company and your maturity of your data organization, and hopefully it'll be insightful for you. If you have any problems with answering those questions or thinking about those questions, feel free to reach out and be happy to help. And that's all I got.
We can take some questions. You got a couple minutes.
Yeah, we have time. So.
A little bit. Any questions in the room? Sure. You know what? We have a mic, and I'm going to have to pass it around, so what's going to happen. Make it brief so we can try and get through a couple questions, because we only have a couple minutes, but we'll make time.
Are we good? Oh, there we are. Struggling a little bit with the notion of data literacy, especially through the lens of kind of a product management lens. I'll shorten my question here. If data and analytics people were more business literate, would we be asking our business people to be more data literate?
I don't know if we're asking them to be more. It's funny, data literacy is, it's kind of a misnomer, I guess. When you want to know what the weather is, right, you would just like ask Siri or look, and you would see it's 91 degrees. Immediately, that tells you it's hot out, right? That's data, right? And you're literate enough to know about the temperature system to understand that 91 is hot, right? 31 is cold, right? That's what we're talking about, right? That's what we're talking about.
Why don't you hand them? Oh, you got it. Good.
At one point, when you were showing that slide with the stats, data is still dark, 58% believe it's dark. I don't know if you can roll back to that, but the question is, how can organizations wait for the basics to be done? And we don't know what done means before can do the next and shiny thing. I feel like it's not sequential.
Yeah.
You almost have to do both in parallel. It's like multi.
That's a really, really good question. Again, the key is to build this, right? And you build this with the foresight that you're going to build another couple of hundred other things kind of like this that are different, right? And then, what separates a good CDO from a great CDO is understanding what's really important to get right the first time and what's okay if we don't get it right the first time, right? And I think that's where anything that it's really important to get right the first time, that's the stuff we want to kind of gravitate towards the center. Again, I said, the data, the quality of each of the different parts, right, are done before we actually get the product, right? But probably not every single thing here, right? There's probably some things that's part of this little device that maybe didn't go through data quality, through some kind of quality method, right? After it was assembled, they probably just made sure it works holistically, right? And understanding what needs to be perfect and what it's okay if it's not exactly perfect, I think that's what we're on the hook to do. And if we could figure that out, then I think we don't need to have a completely fully boiled enterprise data solution before we could start making widgets.
I don't see the questions here. You got some questions here offline.
Sure.
Many considerations for the move. What framework would you recommend? And I'm going to read into that people are asking, are you talking about data virtualization or data services, something like that? Framework was the question.
Oh, it varies. It varies. One of the reasons why, and I don't want to push consulting, maybe you could figure this out for yourself, but it depends. And I hate to say that because I'm a consultant, but I can get away with it because I'm a consultant.
Right.
But sometimes data mesh is the answer. Sometimes a data virtualization solution is an answer. Sometimes it's a hybrid of those two things. It depends on your specific situation. If you go to an assembly line that's building, wave runners, and you go to an assembly line that's building Teslas, they're going to be very different, right? They're both accomplishing the same thing, right?
Yeah.
They're both taking raw materials, turning them into parts, assembling them to make a product, right? Yeah. That's essentially what we want to do. Exactly how you do it, it depends on your specific environment.
Now, I'm sure many of you know this. Joe is such an industry thought leader. When he first started talking about Kimball and Inman, he was one of the first to ever actually implement that. Now today, are people still implementing Kimball?
Yes.
They are? Even in data lakes and like Snowflake, they're doing.
Yeah. So not to nerd out too much, but yeah. So when the human being is still the end consumer, there's still no better way to present data than a dimensional model, right? It's the most consistent way to give somebody, it's easy to navigate. Remember, 80% of the time people are interacting with data, they're just browsing, right? They don't exactly know. Dimensional models are great for that, right? And the experience is going to be pretty consistent regardless of what the question is, right? And that's still, that's why Snowflake is taking the world by storm. Because at the end of the day, you can have the greatest data lake in the world. Relational databases are still what we need because people don't know what the questions they're asking are until they're in front of the data and experiencing it, right?
We were really fortunate to have such an industry thought leader. I got to say thanks. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you very much.
All right, so you guys are on break for 15 minutes, and you come back to your next session of choice. Thank you.